Hi there. I've been doing some sessions on textures in Unreal, and I've done two, one on uh, manipulating the UVs and other one on seamless textures like bricks and tiles and so forth. And I was going to do one on decals, so I thought I'd actually just put all three together. So, if you want to watch all three, it would just make sense to have it in one space. So let's start off by just putting some objects in. Now when you create a blank area and you put in an object that shows lights need rebuilding, I routinely, when I design, because I'm not doing gaming, I'm doing visualization, I go to my world outliner and then my light sources. If I go to them and go to details, I make sure that they're all movable. Even the skylight, which is using the light source as a reference also, so I just go make it movable so that I don't have the need to constantly be rebuilding the lights as I go along. I technically rebuild at one stage and then do the renders in the viewpoint, the high res renders. But just another sort of key, I put down folders here to help me remember. I've called one drop to ground, just to show you that if you're busy working with objects and you select them, when you take them up and you want them to snap to the object at the bottom, you can just press end and it will drop down. Okay, and the other thing is, if you've selected it, you have these editing handles. My next one says space cycle. If you tap space, you will cycle through the different manipulating features of it. Okay, so that's like some quick keys. I'm going to just press Alt, grab the handle here and drag out. It will create a duplicate. And I'm going to do 3, and for the purpose of the decal, I just want to pull in a cylinder. Okay, same thing, lift up, press the in button, and we pretty much got it aligned over there. Because I'm going to use these objects, I think I'm going to just use 2 of them and the cylinder that we have there. So the cylinder, I'm going to show you how to put a decal on, and the decal is basically just an image. Usually it's a PNG with transparency that will be able to skin onto any different surface. And the decal uses the process of kind of projection. It projects it onto the object. The first one I'm going to be using here is a tiled texture using what we called world aligned coordinates. That actually works in the basis that it projects the texture onto the surface. So no matter how you size the object, the texture is projected and it keeps its proportion. The second one I'm going to do is what we use mostly, where we put a texture on, and when we size the object, the texture will distort with the object. So you're going to then resize the actual U and V coordinates of it. So these are the kind of 3 areas that you'd probably find that you work with the textures in UV. Like I said, I'm not into gaming, so this is just for my visualization. So we'll start off with the first one, and we're going to do a brick texture on here. And this one we're going to go into, I've called it tile texture. If we open there, there's nothing in here. First thing I'm going to do is bring in the actual texture and then convert it to a material. So I'm going to say import. Let's go to, where do I have it? In my picture folder, I think I've got a texture folder here. There we go. And I'll choose bricks. Okay, so we'll use these bricks, import it in there, and then I'm going to just rename it as bricks. So we keep it quite simple. Then you right click on that and you can say create material. Okay, it's going to go bricks and MAT for material. And then just routinely I right click and create a material instance, because I use material instances when I edit, and I'll show you how that works. You can work in the viewport and in real time it updates. Okay, then I'll take the material instance and drop it on here, and we've got a pretty nice structure there. So I'm going to select the object, press space bar and get to the size, but look what happens when I do this. Okay, it distorts as I distort the object. So I want the brick tiles, I'm happy with how they are shaped. I want them to keep their consistency when I size the object as such. So how do I go about doing that? Let me go to the actual material, double click on that. Okay, and when we open this up, and we are now looking at the actual texture that we have over here. So in the case when you're using tiled environments, you can't use the texture sample. You've got to convert that to a texture object. Okay, so you'll right click on that and say convert to texture object. Okay, I'm going to just press Alt and click on this connector so we can disconnect it for the while. So we have this texture object, and now we're going to have to move into learning a little bit different sort of instructions from the normal textures we edit. So when I right click, I'm going to search for world, align. Okay, and then we have some objects here, some selections. There's a few here. The one that we want is world align texture. We'll click on that and make some space for that, and that will bring that particular structure in. At this point here, we're going to take this texture and add it to the world align texture, but I'm just going to highlight the fact that if you had a normal, and I'm going to copy this by pressing Control W. I never understand what the W means. You know, you can go Control C and Control V to paste, but anyhow, the shortcut key to copy something that you selected is Control W, and it will create a duplicate. This is a texture object, but I'm going to assume for this example that this was a normal map of that particular object. The reason I'm doing this is just to show you that if you create a world aligned texture that you're working with, you shouldn't use the same world aligned texture for this normal map. If you again right click and go world align, you'll see here that there's an option for world align normal, and that's the one. So I'm going to click that. That's the one that we should select. It has a slightly different interpretation of what is required. Okay, the outputs from these are going to go into the relevant areas. So we're going to choose X, Y, and Z because what we want to do with the world align object is to create 3 coordinates, X, Y, and the Z coordinate. So we need to put that feedback out here into the base color, and it's showing error because there's nothing in at the moment. Don't worry about that. And then exactly the same with the normal. We'll go from XYZ texture, same like this here, and we'll take it into normal. Okay, and then on this side here now we have to feed in this particular output into the area that says texture object, and you'll see the error disappear. Same over here. Okay, now we need something to actually tell us how to size the X, Y, and Z coordinates. So we need some sort of input, and that input is going to go into texture size, and you can see it's got 3 input values. So it's going to need a X, Y, and Z input. Same down here. And the input here at the bottom and on top needs to be the exact. So when we make the adjustment, it affects both in the same way, because we are actually working with the exact same image, but one is a normal map and the other one is just a normal texture. So as we size it, we need them to move in sync as such. So how are we going to do this? Because we need something with 3 inputs, we can create 3 individual parameters and then feed it in, but then it's going to mean that we just have the ability to type in one at a time. And a nice way of actually manipulating it is to use a vector input, an input that is used when we usually create just normal colors, and use for example, the RGB fields of it to actually be our X, Y, and Z. So we just need an input field. In this case, I'm going to go with I think it's V. We press, hold down V, left mouse button, click. There we go. I'm going to just change this to sizing so that we have understanding of what that is. So in this case here, we're basically going to be using the RGB to be our X, Y, and Z. So as far as the program knows, it's basically just giving an input from here into this world align texture. The world align texture will just read it as 3 inputs that we're going to give. And how do we get the 3 inputs into that one place? Is by taking it out of the stop area as per normal when we'll do colors. Okay, so if I drag this across there, we're going to get it that these coordinates here are going to push through for the size. Now in the same way, I need this to also go in here, so I will take this in this area and move it across there. Okay, so as I adjust here, it adjusts the size of both of these. Okay, so how do we set this up now? Because we are talking about size and the size of this texture object, we're not going to work now and say it's a proportion 1:1:1. We're actually going to give the actual input size. It's got to be, let's start off maybe with 128 by 128 by 128. So a kind of a cubic thing. You can see that it's here, it's looking like there's no texture on here. It's because the size is probably sitting all on 0 as we have it. So if we click here, if we look down here at the material value, we can pop it down. The RGB is all on 0. So I'm going to just take this and put it on 128, 128, 128. And you can leave the bottom as 0, or some people just put in a 1 there. Because it's basically taking the three aspects here out in this area. Okay, so maybe I should just leave this at 1 because it's actually doing nothing. There's no output from the alpha channel over there. Okay, let's just see this refresh here now, and I'm going to click the cube so I can probably see it a little bit better when it decides to refresh in that area. So let's follow this path again. We are taking the object into the object field there. We're taking the normal in. We're using this color parameter to generate the 3 coordinates. So what would be nice is when we create an instance of the color and we move the selector, it's going to be selecting a range of RGB, and in that way it's actually doing X, Y, and Z kind of manipulation. You'll see how nice that works out. But there we have it. We have those areas, and if I do an adjustment here, it's going to change there now. But I don't do fiddle here. I'm going to go to the actual scene inside. Okay, now I'm not going to keep this bottom section. This was just for demonstration purposes because I don't have a normal, and I don't want to create a normal with this. I'm just wanting to show you the basics, but it will go for all other stuff. So I'm going to click on that, press delete, delete, and this will be the basic setup that you'll need for tileable textures where you're only using a color image as your input source. Okay, so we're going to save that, and then we are going to go to the viewport where we're busy editing. Maybe I should, while I'm at the stage, no, I was going to put in some specular and roughness and everything, but we don't need to go there. We're focusing now on textures. What did I do? Did I move something? Let me just go and save it again. Okay, wait for that to update. Okay, so here now I have put on the actual texture as an instance. I get paranoid and I maybe forgot that it's the instance, so I'll just pop it over there. But I think we can look over here when we select. We can also look under the details panel and see that it is the instance. So I've got the material on as the instance over there, and if I open the instance now, there I have the actual sizing. I've named it, and if I select it there, I'm going to just press F11 so I can get a big screen that you can see it nicely. So in this case here now, if I had to type in 200, 200, 200, can you see the update happens instantaneous because I'm working with a instance. Okay, but I'm going to go to 128. Okay, so I'm happy with the size of the texture there. In this case now, I'm going to just close it. Now look at this. This is where the tiling, where that particular world line comes in. As soon as I grab and I size the object, can you see the actual textures, tiles texture stays relevant to themselves. It doesn't distort as it was on the other thing. And this is the brilliance when you're using tileable textures, because it's basically like in normal 3D editing softwares. When you're doing ray tracing, you do a UV map that is actually frontal projection. So no matter which way you look at it, it looks like it's projected on there. And in essence, that's technically what it kind of feels like in this situation. Now I'm going to go Alt and make a duplicate. Did I? Alt? No, I'm not pressing Alt. I'm pressing Control Alt and a duplicate. Now I just want to show you this, which is very interesting. I'm moving this object. Because it's all projected now, you'll see that it creates a very seamless interface. If we look at the joint over here, it's actually quite seamless. If I move it, it's a seamless process. You don't have, even if they cross over, you don't have a situation where it's all jittery here because two textures are covering each other. Okay, so this is actually quite brilliant. So if you're doing architectural stuff and you need to have a wall where the textures run all over it, you can actually create one wall and then start to build it up from there. So if we had to go, for example, let's just pull this down to this area. Say I was creating a partition wall, and I'm going to size this. Say this was a room that we were creating. We could create the bricks to go, and no matter how I move this, you can see it doesn't distort through that particular process. So this is brilliant when you're doing bricks, tiles, and those sort of stuff. And then if the tiles need to be adjusted or the bricks need to be adjusted, all you do is you go into the actual instance, and then we can go here. Let's say, like we said earlier, we're going to do 200 by 200. And remember, this is in 3 coordinates. There we have the bricks that are much bigger now, or we can go like crazy just to overemphasize it. So we can go 400 by 400 by 400. Let's get back to that. Just want to show you one more thing here. If you are now editing in real time, remember, if you are busy editing this material and you want to put a different size brick on another area, rather create another copy of the material and create an instance, because if you just create another instance, it references the same material, and then it will distort all of them or edit all of them. Now here is the other lovely part. For those of you who want to do things just by touch and feel, you can click on the color palette. And like I said, now here you see 128, 128. But if you move this little area and make a selection, normally it will be selecting different colors. But now you are selecting in 3 coordinates RGB, and look what happens. Can you see there? As you're adjusting, you can adjust the size of it, maybe make it higher, make it lower, and so forth. So it's brilliant live feedback that you have with it. I'm going to just go back to 128. And you see I can type it in here also, because it's just basically 3 colors that we're working with. Okay, so if I go and I create a duplicate of this material, let's see if I drop it on here, and I go to this material and I adjust it. Oh, there it works. No, forgive me. I think I have given you the wrong instruction. So if we go onto this material and we adjust it. Okay, so forget that I said the previous thing. Forget about that. So you can create an instance, and the instance will operate independently. Okay. Let's see if we're there. Okay. So I was wrong on that account. If you want to create different sizes of the repeatable textures, the Wilderline textures, then just create a copy of the instance. Okay. So we've got that sorted. I'm going to delete that now so that we get that out of the way. The next one we're going to do is your conventional textures, where you are busy moving things. I am just going to do something that I think will probably demonstrate this a bit better. Okay. Oops. Let's just get that. This might be demonstrated better if usually you'll have a individual texture on each surface if you brought your models in, but when I throw a texture on here now, it's going to filter on all of them. But I'll show you what the purpose is of, you know, creating the UVs for the textures. We're going to go, the next one is texture, and I'm going to import a picture. Let me get this from one of the clients things that I'm busy with. Or wait, we can just use this PS4, I think. There we go. So I've created again, right click, create a material, right click on that, create a material instance. Okay, so we've got those boys sorted out. So first things first, I'm going to take the material and pop it on here. Okay, now the first throw on here is going to be usually it skins itself 1:1. But if you now size the object, then you're going to sit with this problem of the distortion. Okay, which is not a problem if you're going to go into the material and keep editing where it's going to go. And you can't use the tile feature now that we spoke about, the Wilder line, because as you start to size, you'll just see more and more tiled of the object. So how do we get around this? Is we're going to have full control over the UV when we put the material on. Okay, so if I open the material now, we're going to go through this process. So we keep the material there, and I'm going to add 2 multiply nodes. Click M and click once, twice. Okay, and then I am going to press U for UV map, and then I'm going to create 2 single parameter inputs. Now you could have a different system of creating your inputs. In some cases you could actually click 1 and left mouse button and it creates, and then you right click and say convert to parameter. We'll call this length. Or you could do what I usually do, is keep S for scalar, I think it is, and it creates a parameter when you keep S down and click left mouse button. Okay, and one day in my life that thing is not going to keep repeating. It's slightly annoying, but I'll call that width. Okay, so we've named that text and length and width. What we're going to do now is use these two as inputs for the U and V coordinates, or the length and width in essence of the actual material. Now, different to the previous session that we did where we were putting in the size of the actual texture, that was because we converted this into a texture object. Because this is still a texture sample, it's got its own UV input, so the inputs we give there is basically going to be a single number. So if we got 2 and 2, it will take whatever the size of the texture and multiply it by 2 or halve it as such. So what we've got to do is take the texture coordinate and we're going to multiply that. We're going to put the texture coordinate in here, and we need to put the length and width in there, but we can't fit it in there because there's only one input. That's where the extra multiply comes in. So we're going to push this into A and B, and then from that one we take it out. Hopefully that makes sense. All we're doing is bringing in a multiply. I think sometimes you can use an add feature. I'm not too familiar with the add. When I get to use it more, then I'll give some comment on it, but for now it's multiply, and it goes in there, and then this goes into the UV. So if you follow the path here, this is for the UV coordinates. It's telling the system we are going to be manipulating the UV, and on the B input here it's saying these are the 2 inputs that we're bringing in there. So one will be the U and one will be the V. So if you click here, you'll see on the left it says U and V tiling. Okay, so when we start off here and we click, we're going to give this a default value of 1 and the width of 1. So it comes in and it says 1, 1, and it proportions to everything. Because if you leave it on 0, then when it reads it, it's going to take the texture and make it 0. And you'll see nothing coming up on the material that you're using. Okay, let me just show you. If we go to length and we choose this as default 0, you can see it starts to already manipulate the texture. We'll just wait for that to refresh. You'll probably just see a smooth blue color because it's now been sized to some crazy sizing. Okay, so yeah, there we go. Because it's now on 0, there's no reference, the size is 0. So it's just taking it and making it so small you're not even seeing the PS. So we're going to go back and make that as a default 1 and that as default 1 on these 2 settings. Again, this is pretty much all you need to do. What you can do is select this area. If you're now creating a few materials, you've got one of 2 choices. You can select these areas, copy it, Control C, and when you open up and create a new material, you can just say Control V, it will pop this in here and you can connect it to the new texture. Okay, but I would suggest that if you've made one material, just duplicate it in your browser and then start working with that. Then you bring all of these features with. Okay, and then I'm going to just do one and click, and we're going to put that into roughness, and I'm going to right click on that and say convert to parameter and call this roughness. Okay, so pretty much we've got the fact that we can alter the U and V coordinates We got a bit of roughness in there. And remember, if you had a UV map that was a normal, you'd have it down here, and all you do is take from here and put it into the normal, because the inputs from all of these would then affect both of them equally. And so let me just do this. Control W to create a duplicate. If this was normal, like we did, the other one would go there, and this would go into normal. That's the addition thing. So as we adjust these parameters, it affects both of them. Okay, but we don't have a normal now. Okay, so let's save that again. And remember, we're going to be working with the instance of this, so we'll have access to the length and width and also the roughness there. So in this case now, we're taking the instance we've created, we've got it on there, and if I open up the instance, let me just size it so we can see it, and then I'm going to click in here and press F11 so we can see this a bit bigger. Okay, as you can see, it's been shifted around this entire object because this is an object in Unreal. It's not one that I brought in that's got separate surfaces defined. Okay, and if you're not sure about how to define the separate surfaces, I work in SketchUp, and in SketchUp you just add different materials to the different sides. It then treats it and will put textures on the different sides independently. In this case now it's basically populated the entire object, but we'll look at it from the front now and see its effect. So here we enable all. It's very shiny, as you can see, because it's on 0, and there we kind of can alter the shyness, but we're not too worried about the roughness of the object. We're looking at the width now. So if I make this into 2 and that into 2, basically it's tiling it in that way now. If I put it in 0.5 and 0.5, it's basically zooming it out to that aspect. Okay, so this is how we are able to manipulate the U and V coordinates of an object. In this way also we are able to take the one section, and as we're dragging we can actually maneuver it like this. So say for example we just wanted the PS to be in the middle. We could basically, you know, real time work with it like this, or do whatever you want to, but the idea is that you're able to basically size this texture accordingly. If you are looking at a way of putting on this texture here and being able to move it across, that's when the next feature comes in, where it is a decal that you can put onto the surface. The texture is now basically a UV map, and it's how it skins the area, and the decal would be how it actually projects. So you can put a decal over a current texture. That is totally doable. Okay, so you could have a blue surface and create a PNG with PS4 and project it on there. Okay, but let me just change this back to 1 and 1. And remember, we're doing 1 and 1 and not that 128, because this is taking the actual UV sample. Okay, in the previous with the tileable things, it was actually using a UV object that we've converted to do in the background. Okay, so let's move on to the third one and press F11. This is the decal now. So we're going to go to decal, and I'm just going to import a object. I'm going to do a specific logo. Let me see, I think I've got one in the pictures folder. Yep. I want to take one that I know is a PNG. Okay. No, I'm trying to complicate matters. Maybe I should just go here. And where are we? Are we in the pictures folder? And I think that one is, yeah, I think that's a PNG. So I'm going to just proceed largest portion. Okay. No, that is going to be too big a file. I think I've got a smaller version of it somewhere. It's big. I think that one is a smaller version. Okay. The reason why it's dark is because it's transparent and the design is black. Okay, so how do we get decals going? Decal is basically quite simple. There's certain, let me remove this here so we know we have that out of the way. A decal is quite simple in that we place a decal object and then the material is placed inside of it. But there are a few things that we're going to take into consideration. So I'm going to right click on here, create a material, and then same process, right click and create a material instance. You know, the usual. And then now we can take the material instance and drop it onto the image, but that's not going to be the way we want to do it. We want to put it in a container. That's a decal container, and the container we then put with relevance to the object we're working on, because we can have an object with a texture on and we can apply a decal over it. So if we're going to apply a decal as a straight material, then it's going to conflict with the other material, etc. Okay, so how do we get to do that? If we go look in the left hand side panel here, if your panel is down here, we're going to, actually, if you want to know where it is, you can just type decal. There we go. It's called a defer decal. Now I'm going to drag it in here. Now something interesting you've got to note here is that the decal comes in as a square area of reference. So whatever's in the square area of reference, this decal can be projected on. But at the moment, by default, it projects downwards, because if you brought it in and it was projecting any other way, you might think that it doesn't exist in the environment. So I think they wisely made it so that it will project downwards and you'll see it on the objects, and you can always swivel it. So the handles are exactly the same how they work. You'll size them accordingly, and it's got a default texture or decal that it projects on there, which is like a tileable thing. Okay, same thing if I move it up. You can see if I move the block off the surface, you see nothing. Once the surface that I'm moving onto is covered by the block that I'm moving here, you will see it projected. Now I'm going to just go and do a 90 degrees rotation here. Okay, and then let me see if I can size this. Okay, what we're looking at now is this particular cylinder is in this block. Okay, so I'm going to just bring it smaller and more narrow. Here we go. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're actually seeing that because this block is over, if you look at the cylinder, nothing. As we move it, as it gets enclosed in the block, we'll start to see the texture appearing on there, and it's quite faint. Hopefully you can see it. Let me just zoom in. So this is what's happening, and we see it projecting on there. Okay, don't worry about what's happening at the bottom here. I'll show you how you can sort that out, but it does it on every surface that the box encloses. So if I move this off the floor surface, you'll see it will disappear. Okay, so, but there is a way in which you can manage that process. Okay, because in real life you'll find that some cases you will have an object that's in front of the area you're projecting the decal, and it projects onto that object. So there should be a way to actually eliminate the decal from projecting onto every surface that it's basically goes, that it covers. Okay, I'll show you when I can pull in another object. Maybe let me just do this. I'm going to take a sphere and just move it in here, size that down a bit. Okay, if you want to check where the decal is, you can go into the world outliner and you'll see decal actor. If you're looking now, this particular sphere here actually also has the projection onto it because it's inside that box. When it moves outside the box, it will come off the surface. Look at that. When you move out, it's off. When it moves in, so anything inside the box would actually have the texture shown onto it. Okay, so if I go to the decal actor, you'll see that the box filters here. Where it stops halfway here, you see nothing projected on the side, just so that you understand that. Now before I go and put in a different texture into this area, I'm going to just show you that if I select this area and go to details, it might be hidden away somewhere, but you can go under the render area. If you scroll down and there's a little pop down, show advanced. If you click down here, you'll go to a section here that says receive decals. That's on. Now just watch carefully. If we look at this surface here and I click receive decals, can you see I'm switched it off? You can see it doesn't project onto that surface. If I say receive decals, it projects. Okay, so I hope that clears that up. Now just if we had to choose the exact same thing and we don't want it to reflect on the floor, when you click onto the floor, you would choose the floor in the world outliner, go there. Same thing happens if I click here, receive decal, see it switches off. Okay, so that's the way that you switch it off, and it will only project onto that area. Okay, now I'm going to just show you how you prepare a material to actually go onto the surface. So how do you prepare the material to go on there? Let's just open up the material quickly. In the materials, there's just one thing that you've got to set up with, is the actual material domain. You choose that to be deferred decal, because you're telling the material it's used for decal purposes. And under blend mode, you will go with translucent, because you have a transparent area, there's a PNG section, etc. Okay, and now also in the same way, if you want to be able to edit the different coordinates, we can do the same with the text that we did with the textures the last time. And I am just going to show you now, but I have it in a buffer, so I'm going to press Ctrl V and hopefully, oh no, it's not in a buffer, so let me just do this again. We'll go to M's, we'll go to, click 1 there, click 2 there, and convert that to a parameter, convert that to a parameter, and the one we'll call length, and the other one we'll call width. And then we go U and click to create the texture coordinates, and let's just feed that in there. We're going to feed those two. We've done this in the previous setup, so that you'll have an idea. If you can't remember, you can just go and look at it again. So let's move that and feed that in there, and that one from that side in there. So pretty much we got that set up there, so we are able to size it if we require to do so. However, important to know that the decal itself, you can size it on the handles that you have, but if you want to alter the UV inside of it, so the actual physical overall size, you can make smaller or bigger, but if you want the UV itself to be altered, you will use these coordinates here. Okay, so if we say save, let's just go and see what we have in the setup. Now what we've done is basically instructed this material based on the fact that we've said it's a decal and it's translucent, that it will be used as a projection area. So how do we get it into this decal? We go to the decal, and then to the details, it will say which is your decal material. And we have the instance we've created here also. Then we'll just go to this area and we'll click the arrow, and it will substitute that material in the browser over here. Okay, so there we bring it across, and now we're able to basically manipulate it. Yeah, and if we look at, let's just go look around. See at the moment, let me just move this out of the way. I'm not sure exactly where this logo falls in here now. So as we move it, I know I can see the change in color, but I'm not sure where the logo is. So when I go in here, I'm going to see if I can alter the actual texture size. So maybe to take it down to, or make it 2 and make this 2. Okay, maybe 5 and 5. And are we being able to see anything here? Let's see where we are. Okay. Maybe maybe this texture is giving me a bit of problem. Let me just go and replace this texture with something else. Sorry, my apology. What you've got to do is, because this thing has a section that is related to the opacity, because we have a transparent part, you've got to take the transparent part and put it into opacity. And now we can click save. My apology for that. But as I always say, when you make a mistake, then people will learn a bit better from that. So I'm going to just switch back those coordinates basically to 1 and 1, and let's see what we have. There we can see it now. So if I go back to the instance, I'm going to change this back to 1 and 1, and there we pretty much have, okay, I've got 2 decal actors. Okay, so there we've got the decal actor, and I'm going to rotate it, okay, by 180. Okay, so what I spoke about is the fact that you can actually size the decal by the proportions that you are bringing in on the actual object, because the decal itself is actually something that's in this box. So when you size the decal, let's just go in here and we're going to just go to the size. Let's click on scale, lock the scale, and let's say this is going to be 0.25. Okay, so there we've made it now 0.25, and if we move it, it disappears when we move it over the surface. Can you see this is how great it is? When you move it up, it's now projected onto the surface. And the way in which you can modify this and everything is in the back end with the material, but it's just to show you that once the box encloses that area, you will see the decal, and the decal can be moved by moving the actual decal box. Okay, if you wanted to make, say there was an area outside here that you wanted to edit, then you can go into the material and use the UVs. So if I had to go in here and say the UVs had to be, let's say 2 and 2, see I have now control of maybe 1.5 and 1.5. If I wanted this now to show these 4 up here, for any crazy reason I wanted to have that, let me just open 11. If I wanted to show 2 of these together, etc., I could do it by changing the UV. But these UVs are not really required when you're working with a single decal as such. So if we go 1 there and 1 there, we pretty much sort it out. So that is just saying 1 by 1 proportion of the decal. Okay, so let's hope that that has been able to help you. And if I have to take here, the last point maybe I should just show you is I'm going to just create a crazy quick material, and I'm going to just give it any color that we can find. I'm going to just, let's go in here, and I'm going to put in maybe a red color, and I'm going to throw that onto the object just to show you that even though you have a material on the object, you can still place a decal over it. So if I take this material and I drop it on here, it's going to update now, but now we'll have a red or orange material and the decal is still projected. To have these areas go away, of course, these little markers, you can press G and it will disappear. But there we have it. If I want to manipulate the decal, it's basically a matter of moving the decal as per the decal box as such. And then, like I said the last time, if you want to make the renders a bit more clearer, you can of course go to screen preview, and you can watch one of my videos where I do renders, and you can change this to 200, and you'll see that the actual visual clears up nicely for viewing and for printing. Okay, so that's how you get a decal onto a particular object which has a material on it. So you can add any material to it and the decal on. Okay, so for things like cups and all of those sort of things. Just another thing to note, that it doesn't matter what shape it is. If you had to take a cube and we did the decal, I'm going to just keep Alt down and make a copy. If I move it across this way and move it onto the cube, okay, you're pretty much sitting with the setup that you have. And the reason why it's shaking so much is because now I've got this high res. So I press space bar just to proportionately stretch it a bit. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to just drop this down to 100 so that I can move a bit easier in the viewport. Okay. So hopefully that has been of value. That's how you can add a beautiful decal onto your surfaces, and it will filter onto any surface that has a material on, and it will show up there. So okay, thanks for watching this, and hopefully this has helped you, the 3 different methods that I use, and it will get you more excited about Unreal. And share the news as per usual with other people. Get them to, you know, educate themselves about all these different things, because ultimately the more we learn, the more we're able to share, and the more we grow. So have a fantastic day, and God bless.